Smoke covered the sky like a dark blanket. And the ground shook again and again as the alien city burned around Ethan. He stood in the middle of the broken street, dust on his face, cuts on his arms, but he did not move. In his arms was a small alien girl with silver skin and glowing blue eyes, her body weak, her breathing slow. She looked no older than 8, and she was losing strength fast. Ethan had found her trapped under a fallen metal tower after the surprise explosion. He did not think, he did not hesitate. He rushed toward her and pulled her out even as the ground shook under his boots. Now she clung to him like he was the only safe thing in the world. Alien soldiers ran toward him from all sides, their weapons glowing hot. They shouted at him in their language, their voices sharp and angry. Ethan could not understand all the words, but he understood one thing clearly. They wanted the girl back, but Ethan held her tighter. "No," he said in a calm but firm voice. "She is bleeding. She needs help." "You are not taking her yet." The soldiers stopped in shock, as if a human refusing them was something impossible. One of them stepped closer and aimed his long crystal rifle at Ethan's head. "Release the princess," he barked. Ethan's heart jumped. Princess? This small girl was royalty. Before he could think more, the girl's body shook in his arms, and she gasped in pain. Ethan ignored the weapon pointed at him and focused only on her. Her forehead was warm, her breathing uneven. If he handed her over now and they delayed or argued, she might not survive. He could not risk that. The soldiers moved in a circle around him, shouting orders. Preparing to take the girl by force, Ethan turned slightly, shielding the girl with his body. He knew he was alone, outnumbered and completely powerless in this alien world. But leaving her was not an option. His instincts refused it. He had seen too many children die in past disasters back on Earth. Not again. Not if he could help it. Then the air changed. A strong wind pushed dust and smoke aside. A tall shadow stepped forward from behind the soldiers. Armor made of golden plates glowed under the broken sunlight, and a long royal cape dragged behind her. Her eyes were sharp, glowing green, and full of power. The soldiers instantly knelt. Ethan swallowed. She was the queen. And the injured girl in his arms was her daughter. The queen looked at him with a hard expression. Then her eyes dropped to the girl. And for a moment the cold queen disappeared. A mother stood there instead. Her jaw tightened as she saw her daughter's wound. She stepped closer, but Ethan stepped back. The soldiers roared in anger. A human daring to move away from their queen was an insult. Weapons raised again. Ethan raised his voice. "Stop. She needs help. Right now, she is losing too much blood." The queen lifted one hand. And all the soldiers froze where they stood. The battlefield went silent except for the faint wheezing of the little girl. The queen's voice was calm but dangerous. "Human," she said slowly. "Who are you? And why do you hold my daughter?" Ethan looked at her straight, even though every soldier was ready to kill him. "I found her trapped," he said. She was crying, she couldn't breathe. "I pulled her out. I am not hurting her, I am helping her." The queen studied his face for a long, silent moment. She was used to humans being fearful, weak, obedient. But this one stood tall in front of her, holding her daughter like a shield and refusing to move away. Her hand lowered just a little. "Give her to my healers," she said. Ethan shook his head. "Not yet. They are panicking. I know first aid. Let me stop the bleeding first." Gasps spread through the soldiers. A human, telling the queen no. Unbelievable. The queen's eyes narrowed, but then her gaze softened as she saw the girl gripping Ethan's shirt. Her tiny fingers refused to let go. The queen's voice dropped to a whisper only Ethan could hear. "She is afraid." Ethan nodded, "and she feels safe right now." The queen took a slow step closer, the golden armor shining around her. "Then help her," she said quietly. "But if she dies while in your arms, human, nothing in the universe will save you." Ethan looked at the little girl and tightened his hold. "I won't let her die," he said. And he meant every word. The queen's eyes locked on him, burning with power and fear at the same time. She whispered again, "Who are you?" Before Ethan could answer, the girl's breathing suddenly stopped for one terrifying second, and the entire army stepped forward in shock. The little princess's chest did not rise for a moment, and the queen's heart almost stopped as she rushed forward with fear in her eyes. Ethan quickly placed his ear near the girl's mouth, and then pressed gently on her chest to help her breathe. Again, the sound around him faded, and he could only hear his own heartbeat as he whispered to the girl to stay awake. Finally, the princess gasped softly, and air returned into her lungs. Ethan let out a shaky breath and held her carefully as if she was a fragile piece of glass. The queen stood frozen, watching the scene unfold in front of her, and she looked nothing like the powerful ruler from a few minutes ago. In that moment, she looked like a scared mother. Alien medics ran forward, but they hesitated when they saw the princess's small hand gripping Ethan's shirt like she was afraid to let him go. The queen gave them a sharp look, and they all stopped a few steps away, uncertain what to do. Ethan lifted the girl slightly and spoke with calm confidence, telling them he needed clean cloth water and a stabilizer mist. The medics looked at each other confused because humans were not known to understand alien medicine, but the queen raised her hand, giving silent permission if this human saved her daughter once she was ready to let him continue. Ethan checked the princess's pulse again and began cleaning the wound on her shoulder using the tools given to him. He worked fast but careful, and every move showed he had done this many times. Before the queen watched closely, noting the way he focused only on the child, as if nothing else mattered. There was no fear in his hands, no hesitation. It was strange for her because humans were usually known for being nervous and weak in front of alien royalty, but this human looked steady and calm, like he had faced danger many times before. One of the soldiers whispered to the queen, asking if they should remove the human by force. The queen responded with a cold glare that made the soldier fall silent. Immediately, she knew her daughter trusted this human in a way that made no sense, but she could not ignore it. She could see how her daughter relaxed whenever Ethan spoke or touched her arm gently. The princess even opened her eyes halfway and whispered weakly, asking if the human was still there. The queen felt something strange in her chest because her daughter had never trusted a stranger so quickly, not even her own elite guards. Ethan leaned closer and whispered reassuring words that made the princess grip his hand tighter. Rumors began spreading among the soldiers around them. They whispered about how the princess had chosen a human over her own kind. Some wondered if this was a sign of an old prophecy. Others saw it as a humiliation. But the queen was silent, thinking deeply as she watched the scene. After stabilizing the girl, Ethan tried to hand her over to the medics, but the princess whimpered and pulled his arm back. Her fear rose instantly, and her breathing became unsteady. The medics stepped away again. Ethan sighed and adjusted her position carefully, telling her she was safe. The queen stepped forward, and studied Ethan's face. She asked him where he learned such medical skills. Ethan said he used to volunteer in disaster zones back on Earth because he had lost people before and never wanted to feel helpless again. His voice was calm but carried a weight that the queen noticed immediately. The queen wanted to take her daughter in her own arms, but the princess was shaking whenever she tried, so she had no choice but to let Ethan hold her. This moment was uncomfortable and confusing for the queen. She had never let any outsider touch her daughter, and now a human was carrying her. Still, she could not deny the reality in front of her. Her daughter felt safer with this man. As they walked toward the royal ship, the queen walked beside Ethan, and for the first time, she really looked at him. He was exhausted, wounded, and covered in dust, yet he carried her daughter with a strange mix of strength and gentleness. There was something in his eyes that made her uneasy. It was not fear, it was determination. The queen finally spoke in a low voice, asking why he risked his life for a child that was not even from his world. Ethan answered without looking at her, saying that a child is a child and that no one deserves to die alone. The queen felt his. Words hit her heart harder than she expected. No alien had ever spoken such simple but powerful truth to her before. When they reached the medical bay, the medics prepared new equipment, but the princess tightened her hold on Ethan. Again, the queen felt helpless for the first time. Ethan looked at her and said he would stay until the princess felt safe. The queen did not like the idea, but she nodded because she had no other choice. But then the queen noticed something else. Something that made her stomach twist. The princess's skin began to glow faintly the moment Ethan stayed close. Her healing rate increased, her breathing became steady. It was as if the human's presence was affecting her in ways the queen could not explain. She stared at Ethan with a mixture of fear, wonder, and suspicion. Who exactly was this human? The medical bay doors slid shut behind them, and the room filled with a soft blue light that shimmered across the walls. Ethan gently placed the princess on the healing bed, but her fingers refused to release his sleeve, and she kept her eyes half open. Searching only for him, the alien healers prepared their tools, but none of them dared to move closer until the queen allowed it. She stood tall at the foot of the bed, her golden armor glowing under the room's lights, but inside her heart was trembling. The princess whispered something weak and unclear, and everyone leaned in to hear her. Her voice trembled as she tried to speak again, and this time the sound reached everyone in the room. One single word: safe. She said it while looking directly at Ethan. The queen froze, her elite guards looked confused. The healers stared in disbelief. A princess of royal blood calling a human safe was something this world had never seen. Ethan felt the girl. Ez's small hand tightened again, and he sat beside her trying to calm her breathing. He spoke softly, telling her that she was not alone and that she just needed to rest. The queen watched the interaction, and her throat tightened because her daughter had not spoken that word to her in months. Not since the last attack, not since the palace betrayal that left the princess terrified of her own people. The queen stepped closer and tried to place her hand on her daughter's head, but the princess flinched. The queen pulled her hand back as if the tiny movement had stabbed her. Ethan looked up in surprise at the queen's expression. For a moment, she did not look like a ruler. She looked like a mother who had lost her child's trust. The healers finally gathered courage and approached again, but the princess whimpered and reached her arms towards Ethan. She wanted him, not them, not even her mother. This made the queen's eyes harden with something deep and painful. Ethan stood and addressed the queen with steady calmness. Explaining that the princess was reacting out of trauma and fear, he said she needed one calm presence right now, someone she felt safe with until her mind settled. The queen wanted to argue, but she could not deny the truth in front of her, so she nodded and told the healers to work around the human if needed. The healers began scanning the princess, but every time Ethan moved even a step away, her breathing grew uneven again. Finally, they asked him politely to stay close. They had no choice. The princess's vitals were tied to his presence in a way they had never seen before. Rumors started spreading quickly outside the medical bay. Some guards whispered that the human was controlling the princess. Others said he had cast a strange earth spell. A few believed he might be part of the forbidden prophecy about an outsider who would change the royal line. Every whisper reached the queen's ears, and none of them brought her peace. Inside the room, Ethan continued to help. He held the princess's hand. He reassured her whenever the healing beams made her nervous. He spoke with patience and gentleness, and every moment he did this, the queen watched silently from the corner of the room, trying to understand what made this human different. After a long hour, the healers finished their emergency work. The princess drifted into a deep sleep, still holding Ethan's fingers. Ethan slowly tried to free his hand, but even in sleep, the girl did not let go. The queen walked to him, her face unreadable, and asked him a question she had been holding back since the battlefield. "Why does my daughter cling to you?" Ethan answered. Honestly, he said, he did not know. Maybe she sensed kindness. Maybe she recognized he wanted to protect her. The queen stared at him for a long moment, as if searching for hidden lies, but she saw only truth in his eyes that made her even more uneasy. She then gestured for her guards to escort Ethan for questioning. The moment they touched his arm, the princess suddenly woke and cried out, reaching for him. The room shook with her high-pitched scream, and the medical bed's lights flickered uncontrollably. The guards froze, the queen's breath caught. No healer had ever witnessed the princess react like this. Ethan immediately returned to her side and her breathing. Calmed within seconds, the queen finally understood something frightening. Removing the human by force might put her daughter's life in danger. She dismissed the guards and allowed Ethan to stay, but inside her mind a storm began. Was this human a danger or a miracle? Why was her daughter tied to him in such an impossible way? Ethan sat quietly beside the sleeping girl. Unaware of the chaos he had created, he only knew one thing. He could not abandon a child, not now, not ever. The queen stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me, human, what did my daughter see in you that she never saw in anyone else?" Ethan did not answer because he had no answer. But the queen saw the uncertainty in his face, and it scared her even more, because for the first time in her life, she did not know if the danger in her palace came from outside or if it came from the humans sitting beside her daughter. The queen led Ethan out of the medical bay and into a long hallway filled with blue crystal lights. Guards lined both sides, standing tall with their weapons ready as if expecting Ethan to attack at any moment. Ethan felt their stares on him, but he kept walking. Quietly thinking only about the little girl resting inside. He needed to stay close to her, and he did not trust these aliens yet. The queen finally stopped in a large chamber with a shining floor and walls covered in ancient symbols. The guards closed the heavy doors behind them, and Ethan immediately understood this was not a normal room. This was a judgment hall, a place where outsiders were questioned or punished. The queen walked to the center and turned to face him with a stern, cold expression. She expected him to kneel. Every outsider kneeled here. Even powerful alien leaders bowed their heads in this chamber, but Ethan remained, standing his back straight, his eyes calm. A ripple of shock went through the guards. One even stepped forward, ready to push Ethan to the ground. The queen raised her hand, stopping him. She wanted to see how far this human's boldness reached. Her voice echoed through the hall. "Human, you stand in the royal court, kneel." Ethan looked at her without fear and shook his head slowly. "I respect your position," he said, "but I bow to no one." Silence struck the room like lightning. The guards tensed, every eye turned sharp with disbelief. No one had ever refused the queen like this, not even her enemies. The queen narrowed her eyes, studying him as if trying to understand what kind of creature he was. "Are you fearless or foolish?" she asked. Ethan replied calmly, "Maybe both, but kneeling will not help your daughter, and that is my only concern." The queen felt something twist inside her chest. Because it was the first time someone had spoken to her without fear or hidden motives, but she could not allow disrespect. She stepped closer, her armor glowing brighter with every step. "Do you think I will let you walk free after defying me?" she asked. Before Ethan could answer, a faint, distant sound reached him, a soft alarm, a healer's voice. The princess was awake. Ethan turned toward the medical bay door immediately, but the guards blocked his path. The queen watched him carefully and saw something real in his eyes. Not rebellion, not pride, something else. Something she rarely saw, even in her own soldiers. He cared. She gave a quiet command, and the doors opened. They rushed back into the medical bay. The princess was half sitting up, trembling and searching the room with wide, scared eyes. When she saw Ethan, she lifted her arms toward him in desperate need. Ethan moved to her side without thinking. The princess grabbed his hand tightly and leaned against him. Her breathing slowed again, and the shaking stopped. The healers looked stunned. The queen felt her throat tighten for a moment. Ethan forgot the guards, the queen, the judgment hall, and everything else. He only saw a frightened child holding on to him. As if he was the only solid thing in a collapsing world, he whispered to her gently, telling her that she was safe. She relaxed immediately against him. The queen stepped beside the bed, watching the scene with conflicted emotions her daughter had never trusted. Anyone like this, the more she saw Ethan with the princess, the more she felt something she hated in herself. She needed this human. When the princess finally fell asleep again, the queen spoke with a softer tone. "Human, your refusal to kneel is an insult, but your presence seems to heal my daughter. I cannot ignore this." Ethan looked at her, expecting anger or a threat. Instead, the queen surprised everyone. "You will stay with her," she said, "not as a servant, not as a prisoner, but as her protector, until I decide otherwise." The guards looked stunned. Healers stared in disbelief. Ethan felt the weight of her words, but he nodded. If staying helped the princess, he would do it, but the queen was not finished. Her voice dropped lower. "There are enemies in this palace. I can no longer trust everyone. Someone tried to harm my daughter once before." Ethan felt a cold chill. He had suspected danger, but not from within the royal walls. The queen stepped closer, lowering her voice even more. "If you are truly here to protect her, then you must be ready, because the one who wants her dead is still among us." Waiting, Ethan's jaw tightened. Then he asked the queen a question that made her pause. "Do you trust me?" The queen did not answer immediately. She looked at him the way a warrior studies an unknown blade. Sharp, unpredictable, potentially deadly, she finally said, "Only one thing I trust. That my daughter trusts you. And for now that is enough." Ethan returned to the princess's side and sat carefully, but something had changed. He felt the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes. Someone in the palace wanted the girl gone, and now they would come for him too. Night fell over the alien palace, and the long, shining corridors grew quiet and cold. Ethan stayed beside the princess's bed as she slept peacefully for the first time since the explosion. Her small hand rested against his arm, as if afraid he might disappear if she let go. The healers worked silently in the background, but even they moved carefully around the human now because they understood something. His presence was keeping the princess alive. The queen entered the medical bay quietly. Her armor removed her hair loose and her face tired. She looked less like a ruler and more like a mother carrying the weight of fear. She approached the bed and watched her daughter sleep before she whispered to Ethan, "Whoever attacked her is not finished." Ethan nodded, knowing she was right. He felt danger in the air like cold smoke moving through the halls. Something unseen was watching every step he took and every breath the princess took. The queen remained silent for a moment. Studying him again, she still did not understand why her daughter trusted him so deeply. It made her uneasy, it made her question her people, and it made her fear the future. Suddenly the lights flickered. A faint tremor shook the room. The healers turned with worry. Ethan's instincts sharpened. He heard something, a soft metallic scrape in the air vents above. Too light for a normal footstep, too sharp to be an accident. He moved away from the bed, slowly pretending nothing was wrong. But his eyes scanned the ceiling. Each second the queen sensed it too. She placed her hand quietly on her blade. Ethan whispered, "Someone is here." The next moment, everything happened at once. A dark figure dropped from the ceiling with a silent, graceful leap. A blade flashed in its hand. The target was clear. The princess. Ethan moved before anyone else. He threw himself between the assassin and the child without thinking. The blade cut across his shoulder, leaving a deep, burning line, but he did not fall. He pushed the princess behind him with his other arm. The queen shouted a command and guards burst inside, but the assassin moved like shadow lightning, impossible to catch. Ethan blocked another strike, using only his forearm, and the pain shot through his body. Still, he did not step back. His only thought was the small girl behind him. The assassin hissed with anger and recognition. "You again, human. Your presence ruins everything." Ethan did not answer. His jaw tightened, and he pushed forward, trying to grab the attacker. They moved in a circle around the bed. Ethan shielding the child with his entire body. The queen joined the fight, swinging her blade at the assassin, who barely dodged. The room filled with sparks of energy from their clashing weapons, but the assassin was fast. Too fast. Each strike came inches away from Ethan's throat, but he did not back down. He could not. The princess cried softly behind him, and the sound filled Ethan with a fire stronger than pain. Finally, Ethan caught the attacker's wrist and slammed him against the metal railing. The blade fell to the floor. The assassin tried to escape, but the queen stepped in, landing a powerful strike that knocked him down. Guards surrounded the attacker as he lay bleeding on the floor. Ethan breathed heavily, holding his wounded arm but never taking his eyes off the princess. She crawled to him with tears in her glowing eyes, whispering his name weakly. She touched his wounded arm and trembled as if she felt his pain herself. The queen knelt beside the assassin and removed his mask. The entire room froze. He was one of her own royal advisors, someone she trusted, someone who had access to every room, every corridor, every plan. The queen's voice cracked with fury and betrayal. Why would you hurt my daughter?" the advisor laughed bitterly. "The throne must fall. And she is the first piece to remove, but I did not expect," he glared at Ethan with hatred. "I did not expect a human to stop it." The queen signaled the guards to restrain him. He was dragged away, still spitting threats about the palace falling from within. The room grew silent again only. Ethan's uneven breathing and the princess's soft crying remained. The queen stood and faced Ethan for the first time. She did not hide her shock. "You protected her with your life." Why? Ethan looked at the little girl leaning against him, trembling. "Because she is a child. Because she needs someone, because I could not watch her die." The queen stared at him, eyes filled with something new: respect, fear, confusion, hope. She stepped closer and spoke quietly. "Human, my world is changing, and you are at the center of it." Ethan did not know what she meant, but he knew one thing: the danger was not over. As the queen turned away, Ethan felt a cold shadow moving through the palace again. There were more enemies, more secrets, more eyes watching them. And now that he had stopped the assassin, he had made himself their next target. The captured advisor was dragged away. But his final words echoed through the queen's mind long after he disappeared down the hallway. Ethan remained sitting beside the princess, holding her steady while she trembled in fear. The healers worked quickly on his wounded arm, but he barely noticed the pain. His focus never left the child leaning against him. She had nearly died again, and every part of him was furious at whoever wanted her gone. The queen dismissed the guards and healers until only she, Ethan, and the sleeping princess remained in the room. The silence was heavy and tense. The queen walked slowly to the window. Overlooking the palace towers lit under the moon, she looked strong from a distance, but Ethan could see the weight of betrayal pulling her shoulders down. Finally, she turned to him. "Human, I need you." The words sounded wrong, coming from a ruler who never bowed to anyone. Ethan waited quietly for her to continue. The queen stepped closer, her eyes steady but filled with something deeper than fear. "I cannot trust my own council. I cannot trust my own guards. There are traitors in every branch of this palace. But my daughter trusts you, so I must trust you too." Ethan swallowed and looked at the sleeping girl. She clung to his wounded arm, even in sleep. As if afraid he might vanish, he brushed a strand of silver hair from her face and whispered gently, "I won't let anything happen to her." The queen watched him with an expression he had not seen before. Not anger, not suspicion. Something more fragile, something she tried to hide. She finally spoke again. "I want you to protect her with your life. Not as a servant, not as a prisoner, as her guardian, until the traitors are exposed." Ethan hesitated. He was only a human, a stranger in this world. But when he looked at the princess, he felt something deep and unbreakable. She had chosen him, and he could not walk away from that. He nodded slowly. "I will protect her." The queen took a long breath and then surprised him further. "You will stay close to her at all times. You will walk beside her, eat beside her, sleep near her chamber. If she wakes in fear, you go to her. If danger comes, you shield her. Do you accept this?" Ethan nodded again. Yes. The queen's shoulders relaxed slightly. But the peace lasted only a moment. The palace alarm suddenly blared through the halls with a sharp, echoing wail. Red lights flashed. Guards shouted orders in the distance. Ethan stood, instantly pulling the princess gently into his arms. As she woke with a frightened gasp, the queen rushed to the door and opened a communication panel. A guard's voice crackled through desperately. "Your Majesty, The traitor's allies have begun to move. Sections of the palace are locking down. Someone is trying to reach the royal nursery. We believe they want to destroy all heirs. The queen's face went pale. She looked at Ethan. Take her, run. Ethan did not question. He lifted the princess and moved fast down the hallway while the queen followed. Close behind, commanding guards to secure every entrance. The palace was shifting into battle mode. Doors, sealed shields, activated light panels flickered. The princess hit her face against Ethan's chest, shaking as alarms filled the air. He whispered to her in a calm, steady voice, trying to drown out the chaos. I've got you. I'm not letting you go. They reached a side corridor leading to the emergency wing, but before they could turn, a squad of armored enemies stormed out from the shadows. Their armor was darker, sharper, and not from the queen's army. These were rebels, assassins, trained to kill without hesitation. Ethan stepped back, shielding the child. The queen drew her blade. The rebels rushed forward without a word. The queen fought fiercely, blocking the attackers with rapid, powerful strikes. But more rebels joined, and the hallway became a storm of clashing metal and flashing energy. Ethan held the princess close and moved behind a support pillar, trying to keep her out of reach. One rebel broke through and ran straight toward him. Ethan reacted instantly, grabbing a fallen guard's weapon and blocking the attack with a desperate swing. The impact sent him stumbling, but he kept the girl safe in his arms. The queen shouted at him, "Go take her to the lower safe rooms. I will hold them." Ethan hesitated, his gut telling him leaving her behind was risky. But the queen's orders carried urgency he could not ignore. He turned and ran, carrying the princess through another corridor as the battle raged behind him. The palace lights flickered again, the floor shook. Smoke filled parts of the hall. Every step felt like running through a collapsing world. The princess looked up at him with tears in her eyes. She whispered, "Will you leave me?" To Ethan's heart tightened. Never, not ever. They reached a hidden elevator behind a carved wall panel. Ethan pressed the emergency controls, but the system beeped with a harsh denial. Locked down. Someone had overridden it. Before Ethan could try again, the queen appeared behind them, limping slightly but still standing strong. Her armor was cracked, her breathing heavy. She held the door open with her own hand and forced the system to obey. Using her royal code, the elevator unlocked. She looked at Ethan and her daughter. Then she said something Ethan never expected. "If you protect her, you protect my entire future. My kingdom, my bloodline, and maybe something more." The elevator doors slid shut, separating them. The queen whispered one last sentence before the doors closed completely. "Human, do not fail me." Ethan held the princess tightly. He knew the next moments would decide everything. The elevator dropped fast toward the lower levels, and the princess held Ethan tightly, her small fingers gripping his shirt as if letting go would make him vanish. The lights flickered inside the elevator, and smoke drifted down from the ceiling. Ethan kept his arm around her, whispering that she was safe, even though he knew danger was rising from every side. When the doors opened, they stepped into a dim underground hall lined with old stone pillars and glowing blue runes. This was not a normal safe room. This was ancient. It was a place meant for royalty in times of absolute danger. Ethan carried the princess through the hall until they reached a large chamber with a sealed exit gate. As he approached the gate, it suddenly slammed shut with a loud, metallic crash. Ethan turned around. They were trapped. The princess trembled and buried her face in his chest. Ethan looked for another way out, but before he could search further, the walls shook violently. A hidden door slid open, and a tall, hooded figure stepped out. Not a guard, not a healer, this was someone else. Someone familiar with the palace's deepest secrets. The hooded figure spoke with a cold, steady voice. "You should not be here, human. You were never meant to interfere." Ethan stepped back, shielding the princess while scanning the room for anything he could use. The figure continued, walking toward them. "The child's survival ends here, just as the prophecy warned. A foreign life touches the air and the throne burns. But today we end the threat before it spreads." Ethan's heartbeat quickened. Prophecy threat. He realized the rebels were not only after power, they believed the princess's bond with him would destroy their future. He knew he had to protect her now more than ever. The figure raised a spear, crackling with dark energy. The princess gasped in fear. Ethan grabbed a broken shield lying on the floor and stepped forward, placing himself completely between the child and the enemy. The spear shot a burst of energy. Ethan blocked it with the shield, and the impact sent him crashing onto the stone, but he held his ground. The figure hissed in frustration. "You are only human. Why do you risk yourself for her?" Ethan breathed hard. "Because she trusts me. And trust is something worth fighting for." The figure attacked again, striking faster and stronger. Ethan blocked each blow with desperate determination, felt his arms going numb, but he refused to fall her. The princess cried behind him, whispering his name again and again. Suddenly, the wall behind them burst open with a roaring explosion. Guards rushed in, and behind them, the queen herself stepped through, wearing her full golden armor, glowing with power. Her eyes were burning with rage. She shouted, "Get away from my daughter!" The hooded figure turned to face her. The queen charged forward. Blade clashed with the spear, sending shockwaves through the room. The enemy slid back from the impact. But before the enemy could retreat, Ethan grabbed the figure from behind, pinning him down with all his strength. The queen took the chance. She struck the figure with a powerful final blow chamber, became silent as the hooded enemy collapsed on the stone floor. The queen held her tightly, then turned to Ethan. Her face softened with rare emotion. She walked to him slowly, her armor still glowing. Ethan stood, unsure of what she would say. He expected a warning or an order, or maybe anger instead. The queen knelt. She knelt. In front of him, the guards gasped. The princess stared. Even Ethan felt the world freeze. The queen lifted her head. "Human. Today you stood between death and my daughter, not once, not twice, but every time she needed you, you protected what is most precious to me. My child, my heir, my heart, and for that I bow to you." Ethan felt stunned. He had never seen anyone bow to him. Not even on Earth, and now an alien queen, a ruler of an entire kingdom, kneeled before him. She rose again and placed her hand on his shoulder. Her voice was steady and full of meaning. "You will not leave this world from this day. You will stay by her side as her guardian, her shield, her family. This is my royal order." The princess stepped forward and hugged Ethan tightly. Her glowing blue eyes looked up at him with trust, so pure it hurt. Ethan felt something break inside him, something old, something lonely, and something important took its place. He was no longer just a stranger on an alien world. He had a purpose now. A promise, a home, a child who needed him, and a queen who trusted him. The queen looked at him one last time. "Human, who are you truly?"